Hey everyone! We sent Tess to NAB 2025 in Vegas. She hit the Arri booth because when it comes to lighting and cameras, they're industry legends. First up, she spoke with Brian about Arri's latest lighting tech, including the Modular SkyPanel X, studio staples, and some seriously bright innovations. Then, Tess caught up with Chase, Arri's camera systems product marketing manager, to learn why their cameras remain the industry gold standard and how their latest gear puts even more power in the hands of creators at every level. And if terms like LUTs, dynamic range, or open gate sound confusing, don't worry. Elias is here to explain it all.
Hi, this is Brian, and he's with Arri, and he's here to talk to us about some of their fantastic lighting.
Yeah, great. So behind us here is the SkyPanel X. Right now it's built up as an X22. What's really cool about the SkyPanel X is you can build it into these modular arrays. And right now we have a dome on the bottom one, the hyper optic on the top. You can change those optics to get, a nice soft light or a really punchy hard light. So I'll turn this down. And changing them is really simple. There's just a clip on each side, and then you pull that forward. What's cool is here we can now see the light engine. So the SkyPanel X is a red, green, blue, amber, cyan, lime light engine. Really great skin tones or saturated colors. And this fixture is IP66, so you could use it in the rain. And you could see here we have this protective cover in front of the light engine. So this is the hyper optic. This is the really cool thing with the SkyPanel X, I would say. And when we use this, we can get a really powerful beam of light out of this fixture. So here, I'll turn this up and point at the ceiling. And you can see up on the convention center ceiling the beam from this fixture. So that's what's really cool here. I have two of these together. And it's 1600 watts, for the two of them, 800 each. And that means, I'm daisy chaining power just using one cable, so I can get something like an HMI output out of a normal 120 volt plug. There's nothing special there. Really, cool bang for your buck. We also have it as an X23 behind there with three fixtures together. That's 20 amps, so I'm still running it off of one normal, 20 amp circuit.
Arri's SkyPanel X allows you to change from hard light to soft light very simply by changing the optics. This is a dream for on-set flexibility. Arri's lights are all IP66 rated. This means they're completely sealed from dust, wind, and powerful jets of water. So translation, you can use these things in a rainstorm, snowstorm, dust storm, and you're still going to be able to accomplish your production.
And then if you were doing something more like a fixed install or like studio or broadcast lighting, we have the S60 Pro. This is like your workhorse, soft light for the studio. Let's say if the SkyPanel X is like the does everything location light, this is your bread and butter, great sort of RGBW successor to the classic S60C. If you've used the SkyPanel S60 before, there's a few key improvements here, like the built-in power supply, built-in wireless, CRMX and Bluetooth, and it's about 20% brighter than the S60, and a much better dimming curve down at the bottom end. Yeah, so the S60 Pro, it lists at $4,280, and the SkyPanel X lists at $6,800 for like one fixture, the hyper optic, the yoke, everything like that. And actually, you could see over here we have another SkyPanel X, this time running with the S60 adapter and a softbox on it. So then in the back here, we also have our Fresnels. Do a little walk and talk. So another kind of like studio broadcast type of light. This is the L7C Plus. It's a successor to the L7 that we've had, a 7-inch LED Fresnel. It's about 60% brighter than its predecessor on average. And
60%?
60%, yeah.
Dang, that's a lot.
So about half a stop brighter than the previous model. And then we have the 5-inch LED Fresnel, the L5C Plus. And I have to use my cheat sheet, or I think I know it. The L5 lists at about 2,200 and the L7 lists at about 3,080. So yeah, hit us up, Arri.com, like and subscribe, you know, engagement.
You know how it is. I'm here with Chase from Arri and his beautiful hair. Thank you so much for telling us about why these cameras are so special.
Sure.
And why everyone wants one.
Everyone wants one. This is usually what I hear from a lot of people. I wish I could afford an Arri camera. I wish I could have an Arri camera. And the cool thing is what we're doing now that's a little different is we're offering the Alexa 35 at a new price point. But if you want to know what makes the camera so special, first and foremost, it's the image quality, and I would say the second most, the durability and the robustness and the reliability. So image quality comes from how we designed our cameras when it comes to the image sensor. So the sensor is what, of course, captures lights and turns it into an image. And so with our sensor, we have the widest dynamic range possible. And for anyone that doesn't understand what dynamic range is, it's very simple. It's the difference between the brightest of whites and the darkest of shadows. So our eyes, we have a very high dynamic range. We can look in this hall and see down into the shadows and up to the bright lights. And, you know, we can see that all. It's not clipping white or really black and you can't make out any detail in the shadows. So having the dynamic range that we have in the cameras, like the Alexa 35, it's very close to what our eye sees. So that creates really incredible images that a lot of other cameras struggle with, especially when it comes to bright lighting outside or low light shooting. So that's a big component. The other part is color, right? Color, the nuances in the color are really important when it comes to looking at where low light is, how the colors are rendered when it's underexposed or overexposed, and we do a really good job of making sure the colors stay the same even when you're shooting in lighting conditions that are less than optimal. And really saturated colors as well, the way that we render that. Like for example, brake lights in a car, that's my favorite way of figuring out how good the color science of a camera is.
Yeah.
If you look at the brake lights of a car, we all know they should be kind of blood red, that's how they look to our eyes, but when they're like magenta or orange and they're the wrong color, that kind of stands out as not a great image. So the next thing that we really focus on with the color, of course, is also the skin tones. So what we do when we build our color science is we don't just look at one or two skin tones, we look at a variety of different skin tones, and we really focus on rendering those accurately. So I think what makes our cameras really special is, of course, the images, but also the robustness. One of my favorite stories, we had a customer about late last year in the summer, they brought a competitor camera and one of our cameras to the Willow Springs racetrack in California. And it was a summer day, so the exterior temperature was 116 degrees Fahrenheit, a little hot. The other camera turned on, and after 5 minutes, it wouldn't turn on again. It was done.
Yeah.
And our
I like
camera.
That you said the other camera. That's
yes.
Very nice.
And our camera worked for 8 hours shooting all day. So the difference wasn't even the price, it was the difference between being able to shoot the shoot or literally not get any footage that day. And it's like another thing that I think a lot of people don't also think about is when you're making a bigger production movie, a lot of money is spent every hour that you're there on set with 100 people, right? So like on a Marvel movie, you might be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour to be there shooting that scene with those actors. And the last thing you want to have to worry about is how reliable the camera is. Doesn't matter how much the camera costs, you want to know that it's not going to fail you no matter what it's going to be put into. And we've had cameras taken up to the Arctic Circle, ice on the side, and they work great. So it's a combination of image quality and build quality, robustness, and reliability. That's why everyone seems to gravitate to our cameras.
You're the best in all realms of camera.
It's hard, right? Because there's always a give-off and a trade-off. So like we love to pride ourselves on the reliability and the durability and all of that, but sometimes that makes the cameras, of course, a little bit heavier, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to be the lightest camera, certainly not going to be the cheapest. Other things are also prioritized by other manufacturers, like for example, autofocus. Certainly would be nice to have on an Arri camera, but the way that you can implement autofocus usually means that you reduce the image quality, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that we're not going to sacrifice image quality
and
just to have focus.
Job security for the AC.
Exactly,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
that too. That always helps. That's why the ACs probably also like our cameras too.
They all thank you.
Yes. Oh, so the base, back to the actual, the new product, if you will, or the new offering. So the base, you can see this beautiful little blue knob. It looks just like a regular Alexa 35, and that's because it is. But what we did with the base is we wanted to get more people into the latest, greatest Arri technology. technology, which is the Alexa 35, 17 stops of dynamic range, the new color science, incredible new body in terms of the form factor. The idea is to merge a very small camera with the functionality of a bigger camera with lots of control. But with the base, what we decided to do is we wanted to offer it to people who couldn't afford or also didn't necessarily need all the features of the Alexa 35 that we now call the premium Alexa 35. So what we did is we basically looked at all of the features that you don't need every day, and we took them out and we can offer them as software licenses that you can buy permanently or you can buy temporarily if you don't need it all the time. For example, let's say you shoot never more than 60 frames for most of your work, but you have the shot where you need to do 120 frames for the commercial next week. You can actually purchase a temporary license for 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year. Let's say you were doing a documentary, or you can buy it permanently and it'll stay installed on your camera the whole time. So there's 5 individual licenses. There's 120 frames. You have Arri RAW. So if you don't need Arri RAW, you only shoot ProRes, you don't need that license because the camera has the ProRes recording built in. Then you also have open gate and anamorphic. So if you're not shooting just traditional 16:9 normal shooting and you need to use an anamorphic lens, or you want open gate, which is the entire sensor, which is like a 3:2 aspect ratio because you're going to do maybe 9:16, or you want to be able to have room to move the frame around, you could buy that open gate anamorphic license. And then the last 2 individual licenses are pre-recording, which documentary and sports customers, they love to have that cache before they push the record button, but our cinema customers, they don't really use that ever. And the last one is a look license, because we had customers that don't necessarily use what we call textures in the camera. Textures are like digital film stocks, and when we introduced them with the 35, a lot of the big DPs really loved them, even the smaller DPs, because what you can do is you can ingrain your look. They're basically like digital film stocks, those textures. So they create a different kind of grain structure, different type of micro contrast. So like the micro contrast is details that are very fine, like on your face, and then also the macro contrast. It all comes together to create a texture, and that's a feature that's part of the look license. And the last thing in the look license is the 87 different looks preloaded in the camera. So this was really cool because customers that do corporate, they don't have time to color grade, they don't have a colorist on staff, so those 87 looks, being able to choose from them in the camera is really nice. So those 5 licenses come together, and then if you buy all of them, you have the same features as the fully loaded Alexa Premium.
The term open gate is used.
Then you also have open gate and anamorphic.
Open gate means that you're using the entirety of the sensor, from every side to every side.
Pre-recording?
Pre-recording is pretty much just what it sounds like. Your camera's going to automatically record on a loop, so that when you actually hit record on your clip, you're going to get whatever time you designated beforehand added to that clip. So if you choose for a 5-second pre-record, once you hit record, your camera's going to already have the information from 5 seconds prior to you hitting that record button.
Textures are like digital film stocks.
So textures are like digital film stocks, and Arri allows you to choose from an assortment of preset textures that allow you to adjust the contrast and grain. What this lets you do is it gives you a unique look straight out of camera with minimal work in post.
And can I ask you, of
Sure.
all of the movies that have used Arri for
Yeah.
shooting, do you feel like there is a recent movie that has used like your cameras and that it has showcased them to what you feel like is the best of their abilities?
Ah, that's a really tough question. Well, I went to go see recently The Luckiest Man in America. It's not a very big movie in terms of budget.
It's a lot of money. Do you want to spend and risk losing it all?
I said again.
I tried to warn him.
Yeah.
It was shot by a DP named Pablo. I forget his last name off the top of my head.
But his name is Pablo.
The first name is Pablo, and I believe he's from Latin America somewhere. I'm not sure if it's from Mexico or South America, but he's not from the U.S. I remember. But he had a great mystery guy. I'm sure you can look him up on IMDb. But The Luckiest Man in America, they used the Alexa 35, and one of his favorite things about the camera was actually the combination of the textures with the high dynamic range, because he could get all that information recorded in the image with the dynamic range, but he also could apply a texture, because this movie is set in 1984, and it's
I
about...
thought you were going to say that. I was like, it's a period piece.
It's a
Yeah.
period piece, exactly, and it's also about a game show in 1984. It's a true story, and so they wanted to have some more texture to the images. And the cool thing about the camera too is with that color gamut that you can capture, he was able to build a look into the camera that he felt was a really good representation of the 1980s. So it was kind of like using the dynamic range, the color, and the textures recently, all in a movie, that I thought was fantastic. So that was just, I happened to see that on Friday of last week, so that comes to mind right off the top of my head.
Ooh, way to go, Pablo.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, I can't wait to see that. Also,
Yeah,
that
it's
was
a fun
really
one.
good sales pitch for
There-
that movie.
Yeah.
Anything else that you feel like the world needs to know about?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can tell you like one of my favorite stories I learned at Arri in terms of like the build quality and the robustness that we do is that every single camera that we build, doesn't matter which model, and we've been doing this for many, many years, we do what we call the shake and the bake test. And what that means is that every camera, once it's assembled, we take it into a heating chamber where we take it all the way up to 113 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour while it's recording. And we make sure that it can take that maximum temperature that the camera is rated for, which is actually 113, technically speaking. And then we take it all the way down, so it's 1 hour recording, make sure there's no issues. Then we take that same climate chamber down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold, -4. 32 is freezing, right? So -4 is pretty cold. Then we also run it for another hour while it's recording at -4 right after we've done the hot test. And then we take it out after that, and we put it on what's called a shaker, and it's supposed to simulate a couple 100 kilometers of cobblestone road of just a camera in the back of a truck. And then after they've done that, then they test the camera to make sure that it works after all of that, because the idea is that if it's going to fail, it's going to fail in one of those conditions before it ever leaves the factory. So every Arri camera you buy has gone through this shake and bake. And obviously that's not an easy or cheap or not, it takes a lot of labor intensive process to do, but you're paying for the quality. So I think that's always an interesting one that I like to mention.
Dude, that's such a good quote. I mean, like when you were talking about the heating and the cooling, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
it sounds like really therapeutic, you know?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
body's probably feeling like good, and then you add like the shake into it. And, you know.
My joke is that Arri cameras work better than the crews do in those conditions, right? Because I don't think there's
100%.
too many crews that want to be shooting in -4, 113.
Especially back to back, just like
Yeah, that would be
of
horrible.
extreme heat, an hour of extreme
Yeah,
cold, and then
I don't think you get too many people signing up for that. Yeah, what's going on if we're doing that? Yeah,
Yeah.
a quick flight to Antarctica from the middle of Arizona.
fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
Awesome.
Chase, for speaking with us.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
From lighting that shifts from soft to punchy in seconds, to cameras tough enough for movie sets and Arctic shoots, Arri keeps raising the bar. Follow us. We talk about movies and the stuff you need to make them.